Good morning,
Good.
everyone. As you come in, welcome, welcome. This is the Sick of This Show with Nick Paro, my co-host, Lawrence Winterman, and co-founder of the Banner and Backbone Network, which we launched this weekend. And our incredibly special guest this morning, Qasim Rashid. He has come on with us to, as the title of the show was today, is Confront Genocide. Um, and I think it's something we need to talk about. It's a really important thing that's going on in the world right now. And for me, I'm a Jewish American. Um, I was raised with Judeo-Christian values. My parents came over from the or my grandparents came over during the Bolshevik Revolution era, and we have family that's impacted by the Holocaust. And we learn never again as growing up. And what that meant to us, though, was never again for all people. Not just the Jewish people, but all people. And it really sucks. And it's really hard that we're here right now confronting and talking about this, but we have to, um, because it's wrong what's going on. And I said it the other week, and Kasim actually liked it. And that was one of the reasons I reached out to him, was I put out a video that said the only way to an ethno-city, the only way to an ethno-state is through genocide. And I stand by that, and I will continue to stand by that until I die. Um, and so Lawrence Winterman and I wanted to invite Qasim Rashid on today to get his opinion, to get his views, and to help expand our knowledge on what's going on and how we can confront it. So, Qasim, can you introduce yourself to our audience today? Um, and while you're doing so, I'm going to drop some links in the chat so everyone has a chance to go to your work. You have two amazing publications that are listed, and I wanted to make sure everybody has the chance to see them.
Well, thank you, Nick and Lawrence, for this opportunity to connect and collaborate. These kinds of dialogues aren't happening enough in the world, and I think the more we can humanize one another and recognize the need to stand in solidarity, it's critical. I'm a human rights attorney. I'm an immigrant from Pakistan, born in Pakistan, raised in the United States, a U.S. citizen, and I think I learned very early on that unless we have meaningful representation on these issues that we care about, we're going to cede control of the narrative to individuals with less than reputable and honest ideals. And we're seeing how the MAGA narrative right now is just devastating every aspect of society, whether it's women's rights or reproductive health or basic healthcare access, economic justice, anti-Semitism, you name it. They're just devastating every aspect of society. And that's why it's so critical that to me, Muslims, Jews, Christians, believers, non-believers, we need to stand together on these principles of justice, secular governance, universal human rights. My advocacy, my writing, my public speaking, my legal representation, my the boards I sit on, it's all focused on this kind of universal principle of how do we ensure every human being has the ability to live out their humanity without discrimination, without assault, without suppression. And I'm always privileged to partner with anyone who shares those ideals, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, or no religion. And I will always stand against anybody who deny the humanity of anybody, regardless of whether they're from my tribe or not.
That's amazing. Thank you for introducing yourself. And I want to come back to a couple of the things you said, but first I want to say what you just said fits into an ideal that Lawrence and I have been working on. And sorry about the light coming on my glasses every so often. I'm pulling up an article. Lawrence and I and our co-host and co-founder Frederick Pogue set up a new network this weekend, or launched a new network called Banner and Backbone. It's a civic-minded network where we're putting together creators who are really focused on re-engaging and re-emphasizing civic value and civic norms. And one of the first, actually, our first banner that we're calling them, they're the pillars of our organization, is renewing our nation through the power of the citizen's oath. And one of the core concepts, and this is a writing that Lawrence has put together and is incredibly powerful. The core concepts and precepts of it are around liberty, justice, accountability, and equality under the law for everyone, universal, with a basic background in human sovereignty and dignity. And that fits so well with what you said is that I'm on the side of whoever is here for dignity and sovereignty and who values life, because that's pro-life, because that is the American way, is liberty and justice and the pursuit of happiness for all. Like, the American way is to pursue happiness for everyone, which means we can't be allowing this to be our name, and we are. We're allowing this to be what the American name and the American value has become. Um, but I think coming together like this, like Kasim said, is a hugely important step to restoring that value.
Yeah. And Kasim, I thank you for the work that you're doing. Like Nick said, we're kind of thinking about ideas that are universal, right? And one of the things that we see happening in Gaza right now is, it's unequivocally a genocide. Anyone who spends time trying to parse what's happening, through some official definition, obviously what Netanyahu and the IDF are currently pursuing it's anti-human, right? It is against life in every logical, obvious, observable way. And therefore it has to be opposed. And the United States, through its long allyship with Israel, I'm an American Jew. I have a complicated relationship to Jewishness because my mother converted. And according to the Orthodox rabbis in Israel, that means I'm not officially Jewish, even though that was the culture and heritage that I was raised with. And, like Nick said, never again means never again for everybody, anybody, anywhere, for the rest of time.
Mm-hmm.
And to see Israel sort of betray itself and betray Jewishness and fail the lesson of generational trauma by inflicting a genocide on the Palestinian people is abhorrent and has to be opposed by any right-thinking person, like you said, regardless of, race, color, creed, religion, anything.
And so I guess my question for you, I don't know if we lost you there for a second. You
I'm
had
here.
a good, okay. My question for you is on the ground, or from what you've seen, is what is really the truth of what's going on in your eyes? What do you see is actually going on?
What we're seeing, I think, is a expansion of what the Israeli government's plan has been for a long time. This idea of Greater Israel, which Netanyahu has talked about in writing extensively, and I think folks kind of chalk this up to conspiracy for some bizarre reason when he's telling us that this is the plan. That this is not something that he's been shy about. He's not something that you find on like a Nazi website or a 4chan website. I mean, Netanyahu is telling us that his plans are to expand the map of Israel. It's why they've built 700,000 illegal settlements on Palestinian land. It's why he's now talking about displacing 2 million people in Gaza and taking over Gaza forcibly. It's why he's bombed Lebanon and Syria and Iran. This has been Netanyahu. He's been a war hawk throughout his entire existence. You can go back and look at the congressional testimony he gave in 2002, saying that if you remove Saddam from the region, I guarantee you it will have a positive reverberation throughout the entire region. Obviously, that was a complete lie. And so this man has never seen a war he doesn't absolutely love. He's never seen a war he's not ready to send other people's children to go fight while his kids sit in Miami, living in penthouses and doing God knows what. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is that this is, in my view, an abject failure of the United Nations. The UN existed, was founded, was formed in the ashes of World War II to ensure that countries didn't have territorial and land dispute. That was the primary foundational reason, so that there's a governing body to ensure this. Uh, the fact that the UN has passed binding resolution after binding resolution uh, regarding Israel's violations of international human rights law, and they've gone unheeded, is a fundamental problem. And I always tell folks that, look, if you think that Israel exists on a UN resolution, then you can't just magically no longer follow UN resolutions that are critical of the Israeli government. Either take them both or reject them both. If you're saying that and I've said this before, and no one's ever been able to refute this, that if you think that the UN resolutions calling out the Israeli government for violating international law are invalid, well, then the UN resolution creating the state of Israel is also invalid by that same logic, by your logic. But if you agree that the UN resolution creating Israel is valid, then you have to agree that it has to abide by those same rules. You don't get to pick and choose. And then the final point, and just to kind of double down on the point you made, Nick, is that you cannot have an ethno state without genocide. It's never happened in history. It certainly hasn't happened in modern history. And this is what we see in every single country that's a theocracy, that you have mass persecution, whether it's the atheists and Baha'is in Iran, whether it is Shia communities in Pakistan, whether it is the Palestinian communities in Israel. You cannot have a theocracy and have justice. It's just impossible. The two are they're night and day. It's black and white. They cannot meet in the middle. And so for us to talk about Israel being the only democracy in the Middle East, well, then that necessitates that it's not a Jewish state. And if you want to call it a Jewish state, then it necessitates that it's not a democracy. Like pick one. And that's kind of fundamentally the problem here. That even having this conversation about a state, those who are unable or unwilling to defend the state, their only resort is, well, now you're just being anti-Semitic. Well, no, it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is real. It's horrid. It's horrific. It manifests in horrific acts like the Tree of Life synagogue massacre. It manifests in horrific things like President or General Grant abolishing Jewish people from the state of Tennessee. That's anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is not when we say a state needs to be accountable to international human rights law, because a state entity does not have rights. A government does not have rights. It is an entity and it needs to be held accountable based on what the law holds. So those are kind of the three buckets I put all this into. Happy to do a deeper dive into all of this. But
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
until and unless we are willing to have a conversation on what the actual law says, we're not going to get anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought up the UN too, because that's something that one of our good friends, Melissa Corrigan, has written about. And she wrote a really powerful article where she was basically saying exactly what you are and screaming at the UN, going, we built this to do exactly what we're not doing.
Yeah.
And it's really a shame. Can you talk a little bit about what Canada did to sort of go around the UN in that with with airdrops of food into Palestine and the Gaza area?
I mean, look, it's actually not very dissimilar to what these flotillas are doing, trying to get aid to Gaza as well. And, I mean, and this is akin to the kind of the point that I want to emphasize, that the law doesn't it doesn't exist on its own. Like,
Yeah.
we create this law, and then it has to be upheld as well. It's not a self effacing thing, right? Like, and just to kind of illustrate what I mean, we can oppose the Earth orbiting the sun. It's still going to orbit the sun, right?
Yeah.
That's not something we have control over. Right? You, you can oppose. You can say, you know what? I don't feel like I want to breathe anymore. Well, your body will force you to breathe, right? Like you can only hold your breath for so long. But the
Mhm.
law doesn't work that way. We have to actually uphold the law. And and likewise, what these sovereign nations have the power to do is to say, yeah, we see Israel blocking aid into Gaza. We see them disrupting UNRWA with propaganda. We see them shooting Palestinians, more than 1,500, at these so-called humanitarian zones, as these Palestinians are committing the crime of trying to get food. And we're not going to stand for it. We are going to provide aid to Palestinians. And my frustration with what nations like Canada and a few others have done is, why are you taking the coward's way out and dropping aid from afar? Why aren't you pulling up with tanks to say people are starving to death, not in our name, not on our watch? That's my anger about this. Because what's happening is, one, you're denying Palestinians basic dignity by throwing food at them from the sky. Two, there are videos and we're seeing Palestinians being crushed under these pallets of food and supplies. They're being, more people are being killed. Um, and three, it's Lord of the Flies. You're just kind of throwing it into the masses. People are already suffering and starving. There's no organization anymore. There's no structure. You're just letting people fend for themselves. So those who have a little bit of strength are able to get food. Those who are even weaker are not able to. So it's not actually solving anything. If someone is hemorrhaging from you know, a bullet wound, no pun intended, and you're throwing a bandage at them and saying, "Go figure it out." So
No,
what I
I
would,
think that's a great comparison. Sorry to interrupt you. I think that's a great comparison is throwing a bandage on a bullet wound. So I'm an Army veteran, and that's a saying we have is you can't throw a bandage on a bullet wound. Um, because it doesn't fucking do anything. It doesn't
Yep.
help anything in the long run. And I'm so glad you push back a little on or push back a lot, not just a little, but a lot on the idea that dropping aid is fundamentally the right thing to do because it's not. And Melissa called it out, and I think I'd love to get more of your opinion on it and a deeper dive into it. Is she called out that the nations that aren't the US, because I'm going to just extract us from this picture because we're not going to do anything right now. I don't think the US has any chance of doing anything to stop what we're doing because APAC controls a lot of our congressional members and a lot of our political system, but also because we don't have the political will to do it in this country right now because we're fighting something very similar. Um, can I actually, I don't even want to go back into Israel for a moment. I do want to come to the US for this because it ties directly in and it ties into what we were talking about the ethno state. Is do you see parallels in what's attempting to be happening in the US with the Christian nationalist far right takeover and a theocratic state? Um, do you see parallels with that, with what's happened and going on in Israel? Um, and do you have any recommendations on what are good ways we as individuals can help push back?
somebody said to me on one of my social media platforms that don't call them Christian nationalists, call them nationalist Christians or Nazis for short. And I can't get that out of my head now. I think it's so perfect.
I
These
think that
nationalists
fits
are
so
so
great.
good. And look, there's a lot of parallels. One, because what what is motivating this bizarre response in Israel is this, you know, right wing Christian Latter Days. Jesus is going to come, and the irony is that they think that Jesus is going to come and kill all the Jewish people, and and that's what drives me nuts about, how do you not see that their so-called support of Israel has nothing to do with protecting Jewish people? It has everything to do with this bizarre, draconian, backwards, offensive, horrific, genocidal belief that Jesus is going to come and slaughter Jewish people. It's just such an insane thing. That's one. Um, Two, yes, we're seeing a lot of those laws being passed in the United States today along that same belief. One of my good friends, Tim Whitaker, is a former Christian evangelical. He's got a phenomenal platform called the New Evangelicals, where he had a break with the Republican Party, with the MAGA movement, over realizing that actually Trump is a fascist. He's an adulterer. He's a philanderer. He's a thief. He's a cheater in every aspect of his life. Why are we supporting him when Jesus taught actually the exact opposite of everything that Trump is doing? And he's done some phenomenal work on these Christian nationalists who think women shouldn't be allowed to vote. They should just stay at home. That they should never have any access to finances or birth control or healthcare or anything reasonable. That gay people should be put to death. That disabled people shouldn't be supported. It's just modern day eugenics and Nazism in all its forms. And I think the most sinister part about it is that they want to transform our secular government, which protects freedom of religion and freedom from religion, which is the way it should be, into a theocratic society, which is absolutely going to result. And the final point I'll make is result in increasing what I've been calling structural eugenics, where you're seeing black and brown people being rounded up and thrown into these concentration camps. You're seeing them being deported to third countries that they've never been to, that have nothing to do with them. And I've all long said, we know for a fact there are conservatively 600 to 700,000 undocumented, mostly white and European immigrants in the United States. When was the last time you saw Trump say we need to build a wall on the northern border? When was the last time you heard him say we have to ban immigration from Europe? When was the last time you saw him raid a gated community of white people and lock people up because they overstayed their visa? You didn't, because this was never about immigration. This was always about a white ethno state that these fascists like Trump and Stephen Miller want to enable and establish.
Kasim, you made such a great point just a moment ago about the weird alliance that has occurred between nationalist Christians in the United States and sort of the Israeli far right Orthodox Jewish uh, effort around sort of the return of Christ, right? This idea that the third temple needs to be built on Temple Mount to bring about the end times. Could you maybe expound upon that a little bit more and kind of talk about kind of what you think is happening in that strange alliance?
I think to me, it's an alliance for power. It's not really an alliance for, I think there's only two possibilities here. Either one, they, each side thinks that when this Messiah comes, he's actually going to be on their side to destroy the other side.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, sure. So the right wing Jews are like, yeah, let the Messiah come. He's going to destroy all of you non-Jews and support us. And these right wing Christians are like, yeah, let the Messiah come, and he's going to destroy all you Jews and Muslims and atheists, and he's going to protect us. So like, it's this really bizarre, spy versus spy. That cartoon of spy versus spy where they
Right.
fight each other constantly, but they end up working together. This is kind of like that. That's one part of it. The other part of it, and I think the other, probably even a simpler answer, is that these are folks who are hell bent on power, on modern day colonialism, on modern day autocracy, and that's just what they're trying to revive. And unfortunately, they have nuclear weapons, so they know that nobody can touch them. Either way, and we can talk about even just this topic alone for hours and hours. Either way, we all suffer as a result because we are getting closer to global war, to global catastrophe. I think Einstein famously said, I don't know what's going to be used in what weapons will be used in World War III, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones because you saw the devastating power of nuclear weapons. And so that's really my genuine fear, that this global upheaval will result in some lunatic using a nuclear weapon. And we can talk all you want about which country has more weapons, but it's irrelevant. Once a nuclear war starts, we're all in trouble. And that's my genuine fear. That's why my emphasis, my urgency is get past these culture wars, stop being distracted by culture wars, and focus on the class and economic solidarity we need to have with one another to uphold justice and the humanity for all people in this world.
Yeah. Kasim, there was another thing that you said earlier in talking about the settlements in the West Bank, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about the genocide that is actively happening right now, it's important to kind of draw the line between the two. you know, uh, so Netanyahu and his government are currently obviously trying to take over Gaza, have taken over Gaza, talking to South Sudan about, sending people away to South Sudan. But then they're also doing these settlements in the West Bank that are essentially making it impossible to ever create any kind of independent Palestinian state. Could you maybe talk to people about what's happening in the West Bank and how it's connected to the overall genocide that's being perpetrated?
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity to go to occupied Palestine. Spent several weeks there in April and May of 2022. We met with Palestinian activists, with Jewish activists, with former Israeli soldiers, breaking the silence, B'Tselem, leading humanitarian human rights organizations. We traveled throughout occupied Palestine, traveled throughout Israel. I saw this apartheid with my own eyes, and I just want to paint the picture. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm traveling with former veterans of the United States military, Army, Air Force, Marine, Navy, you name it. I can't count how many times I was stopped at gunpoint and forced to show my papers. I can't count how many times I was threatened with arrest at gunpoint if I didn't show my papers. We were forced off of buses at gunpoint to take out our phones, delete any photos we had taken of the settlements, these legal settlements, and only then allowed to proceed. I mean, it was absurd. We were in Sheikh Jarrah, which you recall a few years ago, right-wing Zionists were trying to steal land and take land that belonged to Palestinians. And I see, as we're on the sidewalk speaking with one of the families, I see a car drive by and swerve into us, and we had to pull people out of the way. It was a right-wing Zionist, and when I asked the Palestinians, "Are we going to call the authorities to let them know that this person tried to run us over?" It said, "If we do, they're going to arrest us for harassing him, and they're going to accuse us of anti-Semitism, that we must have provoked him to drive his car into us." This is the on the ground reality. I was in South Hebron, where Baruch Goldstein, an American Jewish Israeli physician, committed the Cave of the Patriarchs massacre, killing 30 Muslims during Fajr prayer and injuring over 125 more. There is a giant shrine celebrating Baruch Goldstein that people go and pay homage to as a hero of Israel. This person mass murdered 30 Palestinian Muslims in their mosque. And there's a shrine a mile away to him, praising him as a hero of Israel. I was being given a tour by this young Palestinian kid, 19, 20 years old. And suddenly I look up and he's gone. I look around and I see he's standing behind this imaginary line about 20 yards behind me. And I urge him to come, and he calls me back and he says, "I can't walk over there." And I I had this rage that I had never felt before. They said, "What do you mean? This is your town. You were born and raised here." He goes, "I know, but that's for Jews only. I'm not allowed to walk there, or they will arrest me and take me away to I don't know where." And while we're talking, a Jewish family walked by, no issues whatsoever. My friends, when one religion can walk in a spot and another one can't, that is what apartheid is. And these settlements that are being built, and I want to be clear about this, these are being built with the permission of Republicans and Democrats alike.
Right.
So please don't come at me with, "Well, if Biden was in power." Biden didn't do anything.
Correct.
No.
He did nothing but enable more of these as well. And it's because of my commitment to justice that I'm saying that, not because I want Republicans to win, but because I want justice to win. And Biden was just as hawkish as Trump in allowing Netanyahu to get these arms, Netanyahu to build these illegal settlements, expel Palestinians, and do nothing to hold the Israeli government accountable when they killed U.S. citizens as well. And that's what we're seeing. And if you have a chance to go to occupied Palestine, you will see this with your own eyes. I cannot tell you how enraging the dehumanization is, but it is real, it is violent, it is apartheid, and it is being funded by our tax dollars as we speak.
Yeah.
Can
And
you, I wanted to jump in here. Can you talk about how this is paralleling with ICE, or because it's paralleling in this country very badly. And I'll say it's racism and it's bigotry in this country that is pushing at people who are brown, who are not white, who don't look enough like me, and I'm barely white enough half the time. Like who look like me to make it safe just for us. That's
Yeah.
it. And when I say me, I mean men who look like me, not women. Women aren't safe in this society. Like there's a society that's being pushed by these Nazis. I like that. The national Christian or the nationalist Christians
Yeah.
is anti-human and fundamentally bad. Can you talk about how like that parallels with what's going on with ICE and the apartheid structure that we're building right now? Not sort of, that we are actively building right now.
Yeah, and expanding. There's a reason why Dr. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this is why. There's a Canadian thinker, the late Tony Benn, who I just pulled up his quote because I wanted to get it right. And he says, "The way a government treats refugees is very instructive because it shows you how they would treat the rest of us if they thought they could get away with it." And that just sent a chill down anyone's spine, because the way Palestinian refugees are being treated by our tax dollars is exactly how they're going to treat US citizens, immigrants, undocumented immigrants, anyone who doesn't either have the complexion for protection or anyone who doesn't bend the knee to Donald Trump here. ICE, a lot of their funding now, they're the 11th largest military in the world now by sheer volume of funding. Many of our police departments go to Israel and are trained by the IDF on how to handle people and how to ransack and raid people. That's why you see a lot of similarities there. And there's this strong strategic intel sharing alignment and alliance between U.S. armed forces and the Israeli military, between U.S. police, and the Israeli military. And so I want to be very clear and make sure people understand I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not mincing words. Everything you're seeing the Israeli military do to Palestinians, whether it's snipering children in the head, whether it is shooting teenage boys in the testicles deliberately, whether it is killing people as they're coming to get aid, you will see that happen here in the United States. It's already starting. This is not hyperbolic, it's documented. This is not theory. This is the reality of how fascism works, of how it spreads. And so, whether you are Republican or Democrat, independent, libertarian, I'm telling you, all these labels do not matter at this point. We need class and economic and humanity solidarity against this fascism, because if we don't stop it now with a loud and resounding voice, we will not have due process of law. We will not have a functioning democracy. We will devolve into the exact same kind of autocracy that we see in other countries of the world that we've long stood against for all the reasons that we already know. That's how serious this situation is.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. And somebody in the chat, Patricia, she said, and there's surveillance software.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I talk about with my friend Shane Urich on a show called Palantalk. We named it that for a reason, because Palantir is behind most of this technology and the warfare tech that allows Israel to be so precise in killing individuals. Like, they are very precise when it comes time to kill individuals. We've noticed that they miss with very precision technology, and it only ever hits one or two people. Or in Iran, when they blew up, a huge Palantir was probably involved in that somewhere, because that is the type of technology they make. Can you talk a little bit about the police surveillance technology that, and as I've been calling it, because it's not police technology, sorry, it is predictive profiling technology. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that ties directly into all the ICE, the DHS component, and that apartheid movement?
Well, the broader narrative, and I'm so glad you brought this up, is the decay of due process of law. And I want to emphasize, I want to kind of lean into this, because the surveillance technology is one element of that. It's violating our basic rights, it's violating our Fourth and Fifth Amendment privacy protections. And if it's not this surveillance, it's going to be another surveillance. Who knows what future technologies are going to be available, what retinal scanning, what algorithms. So if it's not Palantir, it's going to be something else. The fundamental point that I want to emphasize is that when we ignore the critical component of due process of law, all these things come to fruition. If we recognize that staying silent because the US government arrested Mahmoud Khalil for 104 days without a single charge, that means that we are next. I don't care if you think Mahmoud Khalil is anti-Semitic. I don't think he cares either. I don't care if you disagree with what he did on Colombia. It doesn't matter what you or I think. But if you are okay with him just being scooped up without any charges, without any actual evidence of violating the law, without access to counsel, and being shipped to a gulag in Louisiana, thousands of miles from his then pregnant wife and his family and his lawyer, then you are saying that you're okay for the government to completely undermine what the Constitution requires of us. You have to understand. I mean, I remember this training I gave to police cadets years ago, and one of the police cadets, I was me and a colleague of mine who's a sheriff, and we were training on Fourth Amendment right to privacy protections. And one of the cadets raised his hand and said, I have a question. How do we trick people into giving us consent to search their car? And my sheriff friend asked everyone to raise their hand if they're Christian. And almost every hand went up. And he goes, well, my friend Qasim here, he's Muslim. And I'm like, what are you picking on me for? What did I do to get this? And he goes, keep your hand up if you'd be okay with Qasim tricking you into converting to Islam. And every hand went down. And the point the sheriff was making is that these constitutional protections are sacred. And if you think you can trick someone into giving up their sacred right, then you've lost the plot. You're already the autocrat that this constitution was designed to prevent from happening. You are where the rubber meets the road. And so for all the folks out there who are like, well, Mahmoud Khalil had it coming, or Rameza Ostrak had it coming, you have it coming with that mentality. Because if we can't protect due process of law for people we don't like, then it's not going to be protected for us as well. And things like Palantir are just going to be another way for you to have every single aspect of your private life. And look, you may not have committed anything illegal in your life, and kudos to you. It's a very low bar, but kudos to you. But imagine every private moment you've ever had being surveilled with your spouse, with your children, with your loved ones. Every private moment where you thought you were alone and it was no one's business but yours, now being put out for the entire world to see.
Yeah.
I don't think any one of us want that. Privacy is a sacred human right for a reason. And that's why it's so critical we stand united against this kind of fascism, because it is a one-way street.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Oh, sorry, Lawrence. Go ahead.
Yeah, Qasim, I just wanted to ask what I think kind of the logical next question is, so what can we do, right? Like, so Nick and I are trying to start this publication where we can advocate for some of these things, but like what else? I think so many people are feeling powerless in the face of the magnitude of the problems we're up against.
Well, I think there's two things to consider. One, there's no quick fix. There's nothing that's going to be a light switch that's going to solve these problems, because it took us decades to get here.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some growing talk about a general strike to just shut down the economy until this fascism stops. There's the 3.5% rule that if 3.5% of the population stand up against autocracy, we can stop it from advancing. I will also say the research shows that peaceful resistance is more powerful and more effective than violent resistance, and that people who resisted peacefully in mass were far more successful across the world in overthrowing an autocratic regime than people who engaged in violence. That's just a fact. Look, the government has nukes. The government has tanks. They're not going to violently overcome those. I promise you, you will not. We don't have the Incredible Hulk and Tony Stark on our team. It doesn't work that way. But mass peaceful resistance will work. So that's one answer. The broader answer is, I'm sick of hearing this is the most important election of our lifetime. Every election is the most important election of our lifetime. Voting alone is not going to solve anything. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I encourage every person watching this to think, do I know who my city council people are? Do I know who my school board people are? Do I know who my local state rep, state senator, my member of Congress, my U.S. senator? Do I know who all those people are? And if I don't, I need to get to know who all of them are. I need to be involved on a local level. You remember these book bans that are going on, back banning books by Black and LGBTQ authors? Do you guys realize that 90% of those book bans were ignited by 11 people who were just hyperactive? 90% by 11 fascists who decided we are going to impose our will on 330 million people. So if 11 fascists can do that with 90% of book bans, imagine what a million of us can do combating this fascism. And so this is where I reflect deeply on James Baldwin when he's asked, how does he overcome the despair that he feels? And he said, I don't feel despair. He goes, I'm angry, but I'm not hopeless. I will never tell my children that there's no hope. There's always hope. And I'm going to channel that anger to meaningful progress. And so, whether it's a general strike, whether it's a boycott, whether it's a march, whether it's a peaceful protest, do all of the things, but then also get hyperactive on the local level and be consistent with it. And I promise you, you will begin to be seen as a leader in your local community, and you will inspire others as well. Don't fall into the victim mindset of the bystander effect or of the hopelessness aspect of it. Take the lead, be aggressive and assertive about it. And I promise you, you will begin to see change happen on the local level. And that will have a broader impact that you can even realize right now.
Yeah, and that's so important, and it's also something we really talk about a lot. Is as to us, at least for me, civics, or the idea of civics and being civically minded and civically active, it stems from local. It's all local,
100%.
and right now there's an incredible website called runforsomething.net.
Yep.
Go sign up for it. And we tell people this almost every episode, is go sign up for runforsomething.net, even if you're not going to run for something, because then you're getting engaged and active, and you're learning, and you're willing to possibly help be a campaign chair for somebody else. Or you can then get active, like Kasim said, do something local. Um, so Lawrence was talking about like fundamental things that we're trying to do to get people engaged through Banner and Backbone. Um, and the idea of peaceful resistance is huge. Like Lawrence and I are talking about it now too, as we do what are called, like we said, our banners. There are pillars for our network. And we're talking now about peaceful resistance as pillar number 4. Because like you said, peaceful resistance wins. We harp on this constantly. Peaceful resistance wins. I'm a veteran. Peaceful resistance wins. Every veteran I talk to who is in this fight for democracy says peaceful resistance wins. Can you talk about other ways of resistance that are maybe not just going in the streets that people can do? Because you talked about local elections and things like that. Can you talk about how we can stay engaged without maybe going in the streets all the time?
Yeah, look, there's a number of different things. Like, and forgive me, somebody can probably Google it and put it in the comments. But there is a black pastor who called for a boycott of Target when they stripped down their DEI initiatives. He's from Georgia. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But this black pastor's call went viral, and nationwide, people stopped going to Target, and they're seeing the worst foot traffic they've seen in a decade, and like 11-12% drop. That's a major, significant message, right? They've lost billions because we spent our money elsewhere. And so it's not just that we've made this corporation that bent the knee to fascism lose billions, but people are still spending that money. And where are they spending it? They're spending it on their small local businesses. And so that's one very easy thing you can do, that the money you were going to spend anyway on groceries, on clothing, on shoes, on car repairs, on things that just matter, spend them at a local business. My wife and I are doing everything we possibly can to say, hey, our budget for shopping for the kids, stuff this month is $1,000. How do we spend that $1,000 on a local business instead of at Target or Walmart or Meijer or some major mega corporation? The more we can spend on local businesses, those local businesses can then pay their people better. They can hire more people and they can thrive and develop. So that's one very easy thing you can do. Two, even if you're not running for office, this is a great point. Sign up, run for something on that, started by Amanda Littman, phenomenal organization. Even if you aren't running for office, the training is huge. Work on a campaign, knock doors, make phone calls. If you have the means to raise money for them, raise money for them. But knocking doors and making phone calls doesn't cost any money. It just takes your time. So volunteer a couple of hours a week. If you and 100 of your faith community members or play pickleball, your pickleball community, even 10 of you guys work on a campaign for 2 to 3 hours a week, you just gave them a full-time employee to help them win an election. Another very, very easy thing to do. And then finally, be active in the social media space. Activism doesn't start with social media. It doesn't end with it either, but it's telling the story. Go online and tell the story. I ran for office some years ago, and consistently, some of my most viral and well-performing posts were, I knocked on the door of a woman, and here's a conversation that we had. She had a concern about abortion, and I explained to her why protecting women's access is actually better and healthier. Tell those stories. Don't cede the narrative to these Nazis. Tell your story. Share the stories of progress. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but don't be relegated to letting other people tell the story of our country. Tell your story of your neighbors, of your experience. And again, I promise you, it'll help you grow your confidence and it'll help other people to be more confident as well.
Qasim, I really appreciate that the answers that you've given have been so hope oriented and action oriented. And so, looking at the chat, Lauren Hanf in the chat said, "So it's not delusional to hope that things will change." Uh, how do you keep your hope alive? Right? Like, what do you do to sort of inspire yourself and focus on the positive?
It could be because I've just lost my parents in the last 2 years, and I reflect on the sacrifices they made. My father got to this country in 1977 with $30 in his pocket, and my wife and I live comfortably now. And I think about how my kids don't have to worry about money and food. I grew up in Section 8 housing. I grew up on food stamps. And I simultaneously have immense hope for what this country can be because I've lived that dream and recognize that for so many, it is just a dream. It's not reality just yet. Um, I mentioned the James Baldwin quote earlier about we can't be hopeless. We have to channel our rage into progress. But to build upon that, we don't have to just think about theory either. Look at the history of this country. Founded on the genocide of one people and on the enslavement of another people. And at every step of the way, through blood and toil and immense sacrifice, we made progress. We ended public slavery. We tried to pass civil rights laws that were struck down. We passed them again. We ensured women had the right to vote. We ensured that the ban on immigrants from Asia and Africa was lifted. We criminalized marital rape. The list goes on and on of progress that we've made against all odds. And I refuse to believe that at this arbitrary point in 2025, suddenly we can no longer make progress. We've overcome apartheid in this country before. Jim Crow America was apartheid. Let's be clear. That was
Right.
apartheid for sure. We've overcome the systemic genocide of Black and Indigenous people before. And I firmly believe that by looking at the lessons of history, of the Robert Smalls of the world, of the Claudette Colvins, the Irene Morgans, the Rosa Parks, the Fred Hamptons, the Dr. Kings, the Malcolm X's of the world, Frederick Douglass's, I believe we can overcome once more. And this is why I say, whatever your party or political affiliation, the hell with the culture wars. Let's find ways to work together for the basic economic justice and humanity that all of us needs. That's where my hope is, and that's where my relentlessness will be till I have every dying breath in my body. And I'm grateful to partner with anyone and everyone to make that a reality. My door is always open, and that's why I was grateful to accept this gracious invitation and hope that we can continue to work together for many years into the future.
I am so glad you've come on with us, and I know we only have a couple more minutes with you, and I want to respect your time to make sure you get out of here on time for us, so you can go whatever next you have. But I do want to say so openly, thank you for speaking out. Thank you for continuing to use your voice. Thank you for allowing conversations to happen. I know you went recently with Joe Walsh. We have an open invite to Joe. If you ever want to come on the show with us too, we're so excited to be able to talk with you because you don't have views that we do. But we can work together because I think I found the thing that I found that you talk about most, that we've been talking about, that Joe talks about, and why I believe Joe when he says he's changed and he wants better is because he believes in basic human dignity and sovereignty. And I want to make sure that we also know that, just like Kasim said, this is not about politics. This is not about what party you belong to. This is about being pro-constitutional, pro-life, pro-sovereignty, pro-people, pro-personhood, pro-freedom. And if you believe in America, that's patriotism. That's what you can do. And I think one of the best ways we can push back, because it's not political for us. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, is if you're a Democrat and your representative is not doing enough to stop what's going on, call them, email them every day, because it's not just the Republicans who are doing it. Kasim said it really well. Biden was just as hawkish. I love Joe Biden for a lot of the things he did, but I will never forgive him for allowing Netanyahu to go too far after October 7th.
Yeah.
And he never stopped it. We have the power. Israel is a client state to America. It's a client state. We basically own them. We can tell them to stop, and they would have to. We're choosing not to, which means we have the power as the people. We, the people, can say no more. And if everyone collectively pushes back, especially those who are blue and or consider themselves Democrats, push back so hard. And if your legislator isn't doing anything, run for something. run for something, but run locally first and find candidates who are good at large platforms, who are good nationally, then support them for national. Somebody said it in the chat was, I think it was Morgan, who's a good friend of ours, was Qasim, if you were to run for something, I'd vote for you. And I know you're a big voice and you have a big platform, and I'm serious on that too. If you were running for something, I would vote for you because you believe in pro-life, pro-sanctity, of bodily autonomy and humanity. And I think we need more and more of that. So I would implore you to seek to do something like that if you wanted to. Um, but if you don't, I implore everyone in the audience, one, to go follow Kasim. He is amazing. And the work he is doing is very important. Um, so thank you for coming on. I want to give you the floor for a couple minutes here to let people know where to find you, to let people know how they can support you, and what your final message is to everybody on hope and where they can make the biggest impact.
Well, thank you. Thank you both, Lawrence and Nick. It's a privilege to share time and space with you, and I'm hopeful this is the first of many such conversations. Thank you to all the folks commenting. Sorry I couldn't respond to them all, but beautiful comments, heartwarming. You've got my day off to a great start, so I appreciate all of you. My Substack is Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. You can subscribe for free or as a paid subscriber. None of my content is behind a paywall, nor will it ever be, so you get no special privileges for being a paid subscriber. You just get the good feeling of supporting somebody who's committed to justice above all else. And I think my only message to folks is maintain hope, channel the anger, embrace the anger, and channel it into progress, and maintain hope for yourself, for your next generation, and for those around you. We've been in these horrific situations before, and we've overcome, and we will overcome again. So my deepest gratitude to every single one of you, and let's keep the fight going.
Qasim, thank you so much. And I'm sure you noticed this, but when Nick was saying that you should run for something and that he would vote for you, my phone practically exploded from the hearts that were nonstop. I think you've got some support here, my friend.
At some point in the future, we'll have that conversation, I promise.
Nice.
Awesome. It's amazing. And I'm sorry that I said your name wrong throughout all of this. Qasim, right?
You're fine. It's fine. It's all love. It's all love. Not all of us gonna have a cool enough name like Winterman. Like that's a name to run for office with.
That is a power name.
It's a good name. It's served me well so far. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate all you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir,
for coming on. Thank you, Qasim, for being with us. I want to leave my message of hope that I have at the end for everybody that I always do is let's stop being sick of this shit, folks, and let's start doing this shit. So thanks, everyone, and have an incredible day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.